The sterile smell of disinfectant hung heavy in the air as I entered the hospital, anxiety knotting my stomach. My best friend, Sarah, had been admitted after a severe car accident. I had to see her, to assure myself that she was okay. As I walked down the echoing corridor, the harsh, fluorescent lights flickered ominously, casting unsettling shadows that seemed to dance on the walls. The hospital was eerily quiet, amplifying the unease that already gripped me. The only sound was the distant hum of medical equipment. I arrived at Sarah's room, my heart racing as I hesitated before pushing the door open. She lay in bed, her face pale and drawn, bandages covering her injuries. Relief washed over me. She was alive. She managed a weak smile as I approached. "I'm so glad you're here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I've seen things." "What do you mean?" I asked, my concern deepening. Sarah recounted her experiences, the strange noises, shadows moving across the room, and an unnerving figure that stood at the foot of her bed, just beyond the reach of the dim light. She described feeling an intense sense of dread whenever it appeared. Trying to reassure her, I attributed it to the trauma and medications, but her fear was palpable. She begged me to stay with her that night. Reluctantly, I agreed, pulling up a chair beside her bed. As the night wore on, the atmosphere grew heavier. The shadows seemed to writhe and shift, taking on grotesque shapes. The faint sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside, but no one was there when I checked. Fear gnawed at me, but I pushed it aside, focusing on Sarah. In the early hours of the morning, Sarah's heart rate spiked, and her face contorted in terror. She pointed toward the corner of the room, her eyes wide with fright. I turned to see a dark figure, indistinct and menacing, standing there. Cold dread crept through my veins as the figure seemed to grow closer. It emitted a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down my spine. I reached for the call button to summon the nurse, but it was as if the room itself conspired against me. No matter how hard I pressed, nothing happened. I turned back to Sarah, panic surging as the figure loomed over her. It seemed to feed on her fear, its twisted form contorting with malevolence. Desperation coursed through me as I tried to move, to do anything to protect her. Suddenly, the lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the room into darkness. Fear enveloped us both as we were consumed by an oppressive blackness. I could hear Sarah's shallow breaths and the low growl of the figure, its presence an ominous weight in the room. Just when hope seemed lost, the lights flickered back on. The figure had vanished, leaving us both shaken and disoriented. The nurse burst into the room, responding to the alarm that had finally worked. Sarah's condition stabilized, and the morning brought a sense of relief. The events of the night seemed like a distant, terrifying dream. I stayed by Sarah's side, determined to ensure her safety and sanity. Days passed, and the memory of that night faded. Sarah was discharged, and we both tried to move on. But the shadows of the hospital horrors still haunted our thoughts. Months later, a series of bizarre and unexplained events occurred. People reported hearing eerie whispers, footsteps in empty hallways, and seeing phantom figures lurking in the corners of their vision. The hospital had become a hotbed of paranormal activity. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the hospital's history. I discovered that the building was constructed on land that had once been an old cemetery. The bodies had supposedly been relocated, but rumors persisted of restless spirits seeking revenge for disturbing their resting place. One night, I returned to the hospital, driven by an inexplicable force. The hallways were dim, and a bone-chilling coldness seemed to seep from the walls. I cautiously made my way to the room where Sarah had been admitted, my heart pounding in my chest. As I stepped into the room, a figure materialized in the shadows, a twisted, malevolent entity. It emanated a sense of rage and suffering, and I could hear its anguished whispers in my mind. It accused me of disturbing its peace and causing the torment that now plagued the hospital. Fear coiled within me as I tried to reason with the vengeful spirit, to explain that we had not known the land's history when the hospital was built. But it was too late. The entity was consumed by fury, and the room trembled with its wrath. In a desperate attempt to appease the spirit, I vowed to spread awareness of the hospital's dark past, to honor the souls that had been disturbed. The entity slowly faded, its presence dissipating into the shadows. Since that night, the hospital horrors have quieted. The entity's rage has abated, but the memory of that chilling encounter will forever haunt my dreams, a stark reminder of the vengeful spirits that may still wander in the shadows, seeking retribution for the sins of the past.